We've now turned a corner from C major to a G pedal point. This G pedal point will be with us for most of the rest of the piece. The first half of it will have a right hand G chord and a left hand seventh. There is the left hand G to F, and here is the right hand G triad. In order to prepare for the C chord that's coming next in the right hand, play the right hand G triad with 1, 2, 4 fingers. After the G triad, you'll be playing a C chord in the right hand with fingers 1, 3, and 5. Because the left hand F key will not fit well with the right hand C chord, the left hand thumb, finger 1, moves from the F down to an E, because that fits with a C major harmony. Next, we have a suspension in the middle part of the chord. The C from the C triad is held over into the next measure, even though the top note moves up to an F. This is in preparation for a G7 chord, which we can expect to resolve to C major. Because there is this suspension with the middle C, and the middle C is going to resolve lower to a B, I recommend playing this suspended chord with finger 3 on middle C, even though that's more of a stretch than I usually recommend. And there is the G7 chord, which will be the end of our first half of this G pedal section. In the left hand, whenever you're playing the suspension chord, if you keep your hand still from where you were previously, you'll naturally play G with finger 5 and D with finger 2. Whenever you go to the next measure, the right hand will go to the G7 like we talked about, and the left hand will stay on the same keys. Because of what's about to happen, it could be advantageous for your left hand to shrink down a little to a typical 5-finger pattern on 5 white keys, and instead of playing 5-2, switch to 5-1. So we'll use left hand 5-2 when playing the suspended chord, and then left hand 5-1 when playing the G7. And again, this is because of what's about to happen. Here's the first half of our G pedal paragraph again. This suspension is going to come back later, and I'm going to use a different fingering because of what follows the suspension the second time. What follows the suspension the first time is going to be a diminished chord. And because of the black key in the left hand of the diminished chord, we'll be using finger 2 on E flat. But the next time the suspension returns, we'll be heading in a different direction, so we'll be playing the G7 chord with a different fingering. I would recommend playing the G7 chord the second time around with 3 on G and 1 on D, because we're about to move to a dominant 7th chord of F major. But all that in due time, just warning you that you need to be able to play this suspension very successfully. And it'll be good to remember that I'll be advising a different fingering on it next time because of a different context. There's a preview. So here is the first half of the pedal point paragraph with block chords. Then we'll go to that surprising movement to a diminished chord. What follows is not a C major chord. Here it is. We're going to keep the G in the bass even though it's dissonant. The left hand will play our pedal tone and also an E flat. Because it's a black key and because we're about to move this E flat higher to an E natural, I recommend playing finger 2 on E flat. The right hand will play an F sharp diminished chord. Because the F sharp is about to ascend to a G, then I recommend stretching your hand and playing finger 4 on F sharp. It could help to have finger 3 on E flat, and if you had finger 3 on E or F or D, it could feel worse. So mind your non-playing fingers whenever you're doing stretches to see if you can find a position for the non-playing fingers that is advantageous. For the right hand diminished chord, we will play finger 1 on A, finger 2 on middle C, and finger 4 on F sharp if you can reach it. Because of the pedal tone in the bass, this is even more dissonant than a typical diminished chord. You would expect an F sharp diminished chord to resolve to G, and instead this resolves to a C major chord. A C major chord with the 5th in the bass is considered, in terms of music theory, an appropriate substitute for a G chord, actually, because a C chord with the 5th in the bass is unstable in a way slightly similar to a G chord would be, and is called a predominant chord and prepares you to go back on our journey to the G7 chord that we saw previously. Let's start again at that diminished chord, and then you can see the C second inversion chord that it resolves to. For our C second inversion chord, we will have G in the bass, of course, for our pedal tone, E in the left hand for finger 1, right hand will play finger 1 on G to the left of middle C, finger 2 will play middle C, and then finger 5 will play the octave above the right hand first note. So because this C chord does not have C in the bass, it is not considered stable yet, and we're still on our journey home. We'll follow that with the suspended chord that you saw earlier, the middle C is going to be held over while the top note of the C chord moves from G down to F. The left hand moves from E with finger 1 down to D with finger 2 in a similar way. Here's our suspended chord from before, to be followed again by a G7 chord. Because we're going in a different direction than before, I recommend playing the G7 chord with 3 in the bass. We're following the G7 chord with a C7 chord. C7 chords always want to move to F. Whether they do always move to F or not is a different matter, but in terms of the language of music, they always do want to move to F. This is where we'll go for our finish. You see that there is still a C in the bottom. It's being cut off by the frame. But the right hand is playing an F chord, which is what we would expect after a C7 chord. So again, here is the second half of our long pedal point paragraph. As we come out of the pedal point section, we'll play a low C with left hand finger 5, a bass C with left hand finger 1. The right hand will play a C7 chord starting on G, finger 1 will play G, finger 2 plays B flat, and finger 5 plays E to the right of middle C. And that's going to resolve to an F chord in the right hand, which you can see the position there. I'm using an octave with A and middle C in the middle, and because of the way the stretch works, I'm definitely going to use finger 3 on middle C for this F chord. It's time for the whole pedal point paragraph. Here's blocks. Actually stop there for a moment. Whenever you're connecting sections together, you could just play the section that you learned previously. And then just play the beginning of the next portion that you just learned. You don't need to play all of the portion you just learned to start stitching things together, because it's already going to be difficult enough for you to remember what we did at the beginning of the lesson, which was this. That's been a couple minutes ago by now, so it may be hard to pull out of your brain again. Take the time you need to remember the F sharp diminished chord. Once you practice that a couple of times and get that speed bump lowered a little bit, then we can take a running start back from the beginning of the pedal point section and try to pull it all together. Now that I've taught you a little bit of this and I'm looking at the number of measures, I'm feeling like this will be our true beginning of the ending, because it would make a 4-measure group if we included this C7 chord in our final punctuation of this Bach Prelude in C. But for your own mental health, we don't want to stop here on a C7 chord. So finish this day's practice with an F chord in the right hand so you have a sense of resolution. We're almost to the end.